She runs the can you give your full title, Tensie?
Yes, I am a professor of business and society at NYU Stern, where I run the Center for Sustainable Business.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And you were the CEO of the Rainforest Alliance for a very long time.
That's correct. Yeah.
Well, we're really excited to dig into sort of generally the ESG financial framework and how that affects sustainability really around the world today. But I mean, before that, I'd just love to talk a little bit about your story and kind of how did you get into the environment and sustainability?
Well, first of all, Dave, thanks so much for inviting me to talk with you today. And I love all the work that SoulBuffalo is doing. Really, really exciting work and really important work. So thank you. In terms of my background, so I grew up in New York City. My dad worked at the Museum of Natural History when I was a kid. So I got to run around the, secret back stairs and see the snakes and all these other fun things. And Dad knew all the stories about the dioramas and what bodies literally were buried where and all kinds of things.
I did not know that. That is one of my favorite places in the city.
Yeah, I mean, the whole top floor, I don't know if it still is, was a taxidermy attic. So we could go up there and see them, playing with all the dead animals. And anyway, it was a lot of fun. And my mom worked for the Vera Institute for Criminal Justice Reform. So she was very active on social issues. So I had, mom on the social justice side and dad on the environment side. And then we had have a farm up in Vermont. So I spent a lot of time, hiking and in the outdoors and fishing and things like, camping and things like that. So, combination of, commitment to making the world a better place and really loving, being outdoors and being concerned about that. And I would say as well, as a kid, my grandparents' city. So I spent time there and saw the kind of real inequities that exist. And so all of that led me to be interested in a career working on sustainability. And I worked in Costa Rica where I was, actually worked first in Sweden after graduate school, where I was the editor of an international environmental journal put out by the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences. So I got to go to the Nobel Prize Award, which was fun. And then I moved to Costa Rica, where I worked as a journalist in the region on environment and development issues and wrote articles and did a book ultimately about ecotourism. And then coming back to
Costa Rica. Where in Costa Rica did you
go? We were in Turrialba in the middle of the country, and then in San Jose after that, which is the capital.
Amazing. Yeah. I spent a lot of time in the Osa Peninsula. It's like one of my favorite places in the world. It's insane.
The Osa is actually one of and I have, with my job running, I was all over the world, and I have to tell you, the Osa Peninsula remains one of my favorite places to go. It's so special.
It's like so much wildlife everywhere. I mean, you go to the Amazon. I've spent a lot of time in the Amazon, and you really don't see much. You see a lot of fire ants carrying leaves on the ground. But for the most part, it's maybe you hear a monkey or whatever. But in the Osa in Costa Rica, it's just wildlife everywhere. You really trip over it if you're not careful.
Well, yeah, and there's very poisonous snakes you don't want to trip over. But so in the Osa once, I was just walking by myself in the forest and saw army ants on a swarm, which is basically what happens is there's this line across the forest floor of all these insects jumping. And, they're just in this line jumping and what is going on? And then behind them is are the army ants marching and all this line of army ants right across this. And then all the insects in front going, get me out of here, get me out of here. It's incredible. So yeah, great experience. Anyway, from there, I came back to the States and I did a variety of things and then ran Rainforest Alliance for 15 years. And from there came to Stern to launch the Center for Sustainable Business, and happy to talk more about what we do now.
Well, so let's the Rainforest Alliance. I mean, it's funny. Mm-hmm. There's so many nonprofits, all over the world that are dedicated to so many different things. But I feel when you talk about the Rainforest Alliance and conversations that we've had, you were able to essentially redefine supply chains in tea and coffee. Can you talk a little bit about your mission there and kind of how you went about doing what you did, and what at the end of the day, sort of, where the Rainforest Alliance was when you started, and then 15 years later when you left?
Sure, absolutely. So the Rainforest Alliance mission is really to help move forward kind of sustainable livelihoods and protection of biodiversity through using market-based mechanisms, right? So when the Rainforest Alliance was founded, they came up with the idea of boycotts versus boycott and really designed, working with World Wildlife Fund, the first standard for sustainable forest management, FSC, Forest Stewardship Council. And then from there, worked on the development of a sustainable agriculture standard and then a sustainable tourism standard and so on. Rainforest Alliance works in 60 countries with about 5,000 companies, or at least did by the time I left. When I started out, it was about a $4.5 million organization. And when I left, it was 50, I think it's now up to 60 or 70. So, and, very active, as I said, in about 60 countries, also working, forestry and agriculture supply chains. In agriculture, working with more than 20% of the world's tea and, around 14% or more of the world's cocoa and really significant percentages of bananas and, all these commodities that if you are a traditional nonprofit organization, the way you work is you do a project or two, and if it goes well, maybe you get some money to do a couple more of them, right? But because of that, you never really get to the scale that really business has an impact on globally. So when you use markets, so in effect, getting the companies to require certification of sustainability of their sourcing, you can get to mass scale and really transform what's happening in terms of biodiversity conservation and sustainable livelihoods. So our standards really looked at, how do you protect the forest and the biodiversity? How do you protect the soil? How do you reduce the chemical use? How do you ensure there's no child labor? How do you ensure that there's no sexual harassment of women or anybody, right? And those types of things. So really exciting organization. I loved working there.
And the way a sort of everyday consumer would interact with the Rainforest Alliance would largely be when you're shopping and you see the little frog on your coffee, right?
Yes, the little Rainforest Alliance frog, which are on many, many things: chocolate, tea, coffee, bananas, and actually forest products.
So amazing. And it's, we could talk about the jungles all day long, but let's talk about the financial jungles and our system. And so your work at Stern, maybe first, so you came to Stern, and what were your marching orders when you started there?
So when I was thinking about leaving Rainforest Alliance and trying to decide what to do next, I taught as a guest lecturer at Stern, and they approached me about whether I wanted to be a professor. And I came back to them and said, actually, I'd love to teach and I'd like to do that, but I'm an entrepreneur and I can't just teach. So how about I start a Center for Sustainable Business? I'll raise the funds for it. We'll create sustainable business programs. So we now have an undergrad, a graduate, executive courses. I said, we'll do a robust research initiative, which we have done now. So we have about 12-person team that we've built, and really significant programs. And a lot of the research is around, because Stern is very much a finance school, is really around the business case for sustainability and looking at things like if you're making investments around sustainability, what kind of benefits might you get that you can monetize, like employee engagement or innovation and growth or risk mitigation or operational efficiency, right? And then we also do research into things like how do you scale up financing for sustainable investments or consumer insight work that we'll talk about a bit. We do work around sort of what are consumers purchasing in terms of sustainable products.
You and I met, I remember it so clearly. A friend of mine that works at the UN told me about a talk that was happening at Stern. So I just was in the area and I randomly went, and you were facilitating a conversation from I think it was John Banner at PepsiCo, who runs the foundation there, and Francesca at McDonald's, who runs their supply chain work. And I was sitting in the back, and I was fascinated. And it was just when we had signed the check to charter the ship that when we took everybody out into the Atlantic Gyre, we took 165 leaders out and did the Ocean Plastic Leadership Summit. And I remember, I don't even really know why, but at the end of I was just I got to go up and say hi to her. Right. And how it goes at the end of it, when everyone's talking, the speakers and everyone, you just gets totally swarmed. And and I remember that I was just kind of found this perfect moment to come up and introduce myself to you. And I think we might've had coffee a week later or whatever. And the next thing you know, you were on the ship with us, and
I was so much fun.
Yeah. And I remember one of the strategies, I remember your talk specifically. We had so many incredible talks, but one of the things that you said is like your secret sauce in like working with a lot of the big companies. I forget exactly how you phrased it, but something along the lines of like, if you want to, correct me if this is wrong, but like if you want to get something done, it's really important to keep the egos of the people in the organizations you're working with sort of front and center, and like how you can like help them help the person to help the cause, or something along those lines. Did I totally butcher that? Do you remember that?
No, you didn't. No, I mean, basically, like, it's how do you figure out that win-win, right? That's going to help them with their objectives, help them look good, but also, not lose sight of your own objectives. Because as an NGO, it's really important that you don't, give up on those, and you're making sure you're moving ahead with your mission, right? So, yeah, it's creating those and speaking their language, I think, because oftentimes as activists, environmentalists, we don't always speak the language that's going to get us the farthest in terms of our objectives.
Totally. Well, so I mean, I think that's that going into the sort of ESG work that you're doing, right? And this like ESG movement, right? Environmental, social, governance, financial framework, right? Which is essentially a mechanism to help investors make decisions through these essentially financial products that are going to help the world, for lack of a better way of putting it. Do you have so can you define that maybe a little bit more broadly?
Well, so, I mean, I think we see, so we've got sort of two areas of focus in terms of sustainability, right? There's corporate sustainability and what corporates can do to improve their performance on environmental, social, and governance issues, generally sort of under a sustainability banner, if you will. In some cases, people have tended to think of sustainability as environmental, but really it covers all of these issues. Then investors are increasingly looking for performance metrics around environmental, social, and governance issues that are material to the businesses that they're investing in. So, for a retail operation, obviously people and how you're treating your people is going to be a material ESG, a social issue. For a utility, how you're handling climate and carbon emissions, greenhouse gas emissions would be a material environmental issue. So investors are increasingly focusing on those in a variety of different ways, from true impact investing plays where they really are looking to invest in a business that's going to solve for a key environmental or social challenge, or where they're just adding ESG metrics to an analysis of a company whose primary mission may not be changing a particular environmental or social challenge, but the way in which they do their business, like a big consumer packaged goods company, can have negative or positive environmental or social implications. And so they're looking at their performance in those issues as well. And what we're finding is that what's fascinating about sustainability and ESG is that in effect, it's really the next wave of good management. That sustainability drives innovation, it drives risk mitigation, it drives employee engagement, it drives customer loyalty, supplier loyalty, earned media, operational efficiency, et cetera, right? And other things can drive those positive management benefits, but really sustainability is that new wave. And we're seeing that across, we work with a methodology we call ROSI, Return on Sustainability Investment, where we're providing companies with the tools to actually understand, if I'm investing in a climate change strategy, in addition to the reduction in my greenhouse gas emissions, what else is happening for me? Am I developing new services that make me more money? Am I improving our processes so I'm reducing not only energy costs, but potentially water costs? And am I becoming less dependent on the volatility of the fuel market, right? So I have lower risk, or am I now accessing lower cost of capital because I no longer have exposure to coal if I'm a utility, right? And I've gotten out of coal. So those types of things are the types of things that we're looking at through this ROSI methodology, which is available on our website with all the tools that anybody might want.
And you just wrote an article for Harvard Business Review about this too.
Yes, Harvard Business Review today just came out with the issue with like, how do you talk to your CFO about sustainability, and that's what that piece is about. So I think you're kindly offered to get it out to your listenership. So thank you.
We sure will. We'll share this with we'll share that link in the recap of this and make sure we send it broad and wide. Would you say ESG is a movement? Like, would you say, I mean, like people get excited when you talk about ESG. When you talk to like sustainability people and ESG, like all these big companies, like it's super important for the senior officers in these companies to understand what it means, you know, what the ESG score means. But would you say it's like a movement yet, or is it?
I would say that it is becoming, so it's a movement in a broader cultural sense, yes. And I think that as we have younger executives who get it, and as we see very front and center social issues like Black Lives Matter, like COVID, having direct impact and really clear direct impacts of climate change happening now, I think that companies and real customer demand and pull as well. I think that companies are seeing this as something that they need to take out of the basement and move closer to their core operations. Yes, it's a movement, but I also like to think of it as something that, because a movement sort of sounds like it might stop, and like you have different movements, one comes, one goes. For me, this is it's the next kind of iteration of how business needs to structure itself, whether you're in investments or in regular business operations. You've got to build these issues into your management approaches and your strategy. It's got to be core to your business strategy if you're going to want to do well moving forward.
Do you have some examples that pop to mind of like companies that have really done it right, like on whether it be like strategically or sort of corporate financials? I mean, anything that pops to mind that could bring this all to light for a little bit?
Yeah, well, so I think one of the unique, if you look at Unilever, what's interesting about them as a consumer packaged good company is that their business strategy is that their sustainability strategy is their business strategy. It's called their sustainable living plan. And in that sustainable living plan, they have, massive commitments, including to, getting rid of plastic packaging. But they have commitments of having their environmental footprint and supporting I think it's 1 million small producers and a whole series of other targets, and understanding the full life cycle of all their products, making sure that their products contribute positively to the Sustainable Development Goals, tying all this to executive compensation, et cetera. So they really have. It's not that they're perfect, but they've taken a very strategic, comprehensive approach, as opposed to having it be a little corporate social responsibility element off to the side, right? And that's what I think we need across all companies.
Totally. I was reading a book, I forget which one, the other day, but it was just going into like the Paul Pullman, former Unilever CEO, and I know you know him well and have done a lot of podcasts and otherwise with him, talking about his first day on the job where he said he was going to stop reporting quarterly.
Yes.
And like the stock dropped 8 points right out, but it just enabled them to work in a different kind of way, where they weren't rushing to put these quarterly reports out. And they could really, focus on the sort of long-term sustainability and viability. Are a lot of companies doing that now? Because I feel like really only hear about Unilever, but is it?
No, there's a few other companies that have done that, but we didn't see a lot of people following in their footsteps. And actually, that's another initiative that we did, another research project we did with the CEO, CECP, which has a strategic investor initiative, CEO Force for Good, I think they're called, when you spread it out. And they, together with us, we worked on identifying how we bring the financial impact of ESG into quarterly calls and developing a model for corporates to use with investors. And so we worked with Jones Lang LaSalle, which is a real estate company, for example, that now is incorporating that into their quarterly calls and sort of beginning to educate the analysts that these are topics that they need to care about and they need to think about in a long-term context. So we need far more focus on that long-term, and strategic investments in sustainability.
I think it's like when you think about, any of the supply chain or just like any of the big companies out there, regardless. I mean, especially like any companies that have products in supermarkets per se, like the margins are so thin. Right. So it's highly competitive, right? I mean, in the plastic work, that has a direct correlation to makes it difficult to buy recycled plastic in some cases because the cost of virgin plastic is low. So what are some of the ways you can monetize sustainability like you talked about?
Yeah. So one, we've been doing work with IRI. So this is sort of how you monetize it from a consumer perspective. So IRI collects all of our barcode data at retail. So whether it's a mom and pop shop or a Target, when we go in, we purchase a product, a consumer packaged good product, so either a personal care product or a food product. They collect all that data. So we have a 5-year contract with them. We looked at 36 of 40 consumer packaged goods categories, everything from laundry detergent to coffee. And we looked at 73,000 different products over a 5-year period. And what we found is that 55% of the growth in consumer packaged goods over the last 5 years came from sustainability marketed products. At the same time, they were charging on average 39% premium. And I can tell you, having worked extensively in my career with CPG, they are not actually costing, it is not costing 39% more, at most a couple of percentage points more. So they're actually doing quite well with significant premiums on these sustainably marketed products. And what we're seeing as well is that this is surviving COVID. We were curious as to whether during the pandemic people would stop purchasing these products, but no, they're continuing to purchase them. So, and it's really, there's clearly more, it skews more millennial, skews more higher income, skews more higher education, but actually across all categories, people are, buying significant percentages of sustainably marketed products. And so, that's like the consumer piece. People say, oh, there's a green gap, but actually there isn't. And so there is a really growing demand for these products. Other ways in which, operational efficiency, if you're a manufacturing company, like I'll just give you another example of that. So a pulp and paper company we work with, they were thinking about, like reducing water in their factories, water use. They use a lot of water. People were saying the water's free here where they were situated. The sustainability director looked at within each factory, within each mill, basically to move the enormous amount of water around, you use a lot of energy to move it, to heat it, and to cool it. And then you have an enormous amount of wastewater that you have to pay to dispose of. So actually that free water was costing $1.5 million in cost annually. So if they reduce the amount of water that they use, they could actually reduce those associated costs. So that's an example of an operational efficiency. So we just see over and over and over again, financial benefit of putting in place. And one other quick example, working with REI, the outdoor apparel company, activewear company, is that a word? They are very purpose and sustainability oriented. And what we found is that they have about $34 million a year benefit in terms of employee retention and productivity as a result of that strong mission approach.
I love REI.
It's a great company.
Yeah, they have dividends and I live in the Catskills, and we're outside all the time. But anyway, but you're right. I mean, when you go into REI that they're paying special attention, and I think the outdoor industry in general, I think is leading, in a lot of. So you just did a research project about how sustainable products compete in the marketplace. So that's generally sort of what these 73,000.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
That's amazing. 73,000 products and 50. When I think sustainable products, I don't know. I feel like I just buy 7th generation everything, which is owned by Unilever.
Well, we looked at a total universe of 73,000. Not all of them were sustainable, but like as we said, 55% of the growth in the category for over 5 years was in those categories was sustainable. So, or was marketed as sustainable. We couldn't go in and determine whether everyone actually was, but really interesting to see that.
Got it. And what do you feel like some of the best products are out there, like that, make you the most excited?
Well, I like category disruptors, from a sustainability perspective. So I've discovered this great laundry detergent. So we still deal with laundry detergent, like it's now smaller, but it's still a lot of plastic, really heavy, water in it, big carbon footprint, blah, blah, blah. There's a company called True Earth that makes little strips of laundry detergent like this. So I have a cardboard box this big that has a full year of laundry detergent in it. And that's the total footprint. And I just pull out a little strip and put it in there and it works perfectly. And then I bought these 4 woolen balls that I put in the dryer, and it keeps everything soft, but it reduces the drying cycle by 20%. So it's just these innovations that change the category are really cool. Another one is like what would be another good category? Well, Flyknit, like Nike Flyknit, complete category changer because the sneakers typically are made by just like stamping out these little pieces of stuff, and you have a lot of waste. You sew it all together. It's wasteful. They were looking to reduce the waste, but also create a higher performance shoe. So they came up with the idea of Flyknit, which is one strand of recycled plastic that you knit into the upper. It's 15% lighter. It reduces waste by 80%. It's now a $1 billion+ business for them. And all of the other companies, shoe companies, have been copying them, right? So looking for those kind of category disruptors is what I love to look for in products.
True Earth. Yeah, we just have giant bottles of,
True Earth, no E in the true, and definitely get some.
All right, that's cool. You're also
I'm not a paid representative, I promise.
You're also supposed to wash them cold as much as you possibly can to save energy.
Yeah.
All right. Very cool. So I asked this to everyone. If you had a day to spend with your environmental superhero, could be anybody alive, dead, like you get a full day, who would you pick?
Greta Thunberg. That's who I would love to hang with her. Having lived and worked in Sweden, that would be cool. I love young people. They give you so much energy, and she's just fascinating. So I would love to hang with her, understand kind of how she got to where she is, what she sees in front of her, what she wants to do. And that would be great, fun, and fascinating.
She is absolutely, she's a very popular answer, as is David Attenborough. And there's a few others. If kind of ranging the spectrum, but I mean, I think what she's done for it's hard to like put a value from what she's done for the climate movement, but she has like such a force. So I'd like to hang out with you and her on the day.
That'd be fun. And in Sweden in summertime, midsummer, beautiful.
That would be, it would be amazing. Sweden. I've never been to Sweden. Dealing with I'm working with a lot of folks in Norway. It's dark right now at 4:00.
Yeah.
I guess it's probably dark here in New York at 5:00.
It is. So not so much different.
So, what are you most excited about kind of in the coming year once we move into 2021? Is there anything that sort of just rises to the top for you?
Well, I'm looking forward to a new administration that is putting in place good climate people. So that's very, and across different areas too, not just as the climates are, but in economic development posts and things like that. So I'm excited to see some support from the federal government for climate change initiatives. I'm also, of course, like all of us, really looking forward to being able to move out of COVID and being able to, go full steam ahead with sustainability efforts. I also think that COVID and the economic situation has really shown an important light on the inequities we have in this society, both racially and financial, sort of economically, and with workers versus CEO pay and that kind of thing. And so I'm excited to hopefully see, real investment in workers, in diversity and inclusion, and some of these social issues, as well as the really important environmental issues that we're confronting.
Definitely 2020 was a year we'll all remember. It's definitely exciting to think about rejoining the Paris Agreement and kind of what that means. And we're doing a lot of work, this coming year around the Global Treaty for Plastics, which should be really interesting to hear what the Biden administration has to say about that. As opposed to the current administration where there wasn't any interest at all. So I mean, it's super exciting. We're excited to stay in touch with you and continue working with you. And just super grateful for our partnership, Tensie, and to have you on the Earth Report today.
Thank you so much, Dave. It was a pleasure to talk with you. And again, so support all the things and the hard work that you all are doing. Thank you.
Thanks so much. So we are going to be back on Thursday with Eric Lindberg, who runs the global policy lead for the World Wildlife Fund, who's working specifically on the Global Treaty for Plastic. So he's one of our core partners there. So we're really excited for that. That'll be Thursday. And thank you. Thanks so much for everybody that checked in. And Tensie, thank you again. Super, super grateful on all fronts. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Dave.
All right. Bye-bye.